franchise offices. We're your trusted in-home care agency, helping you keep your aging loved ones in their home as they grow older. Before we get started on today's chat, I do want to go over just a few things so that you understand what to expect and how today's chat will go. First of all, we have muted all of your phone lines. This helps us keep any background noise to a minimum, and it allows you to continue working, caregiving, or doing whatever you might be doing while you listen to the chat. You can begin asking your questions at any time. Just go ahead and look for that question section on your screen, or you can email questions to us anytime at livechat@homeinstead.com. We read all of your emails and really do our best to reply to as many as possible. I also want to let you know that we are recording today's chat. So if you don't have a pen and paper ready to take notes, don't worry about it. When the broadcast is over, we will send you an email containing a link to the recording as well as any of the resources that we discuss during the chat. All right, well, let's get started with our chat. My name is Kat Kaler. I'm the social media advocate here at Home Instead Senior Care, and that means that I interact with all of you on our different social media properties like Twitter, Facebook. I write blogs for a few of our websites like Caregiver Stress and homeinstead.com. And of course, my favorite part of the job is hosting our chats every month. And I'm really excited to have Molly Carpenter back with us as one of our experts. Molly is an author. In fact, if you've been on our chats before, you hear me reference her book quite a bit. She wrote Confidence to Care, a resource for family caregivers providing Alzheimer's disease or other dementias care at home. And it's one of my go-to resources when you all send me questions. Molly is also a speaker, a trainer, and a family caregiver. And here at Home Instead, she works with a team that's responsible for making sure that all of our caregivers around the world, and we're approaching 65,000 of them, have all the resources that they need to make sure they're providing the best care possible. Okay, Molly, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you, Kat. I'm very glad to be here.
So our topic today is probably one of my favorite topics because it's something I struggle with, and it's something that I know a lot of caregivers struggle with. We're talking about asking for help, getting help, and accepting that help. Why is it so hard for us to do any of those three things?
I think it's very hard, Kat, to ask for help. I think it's hard for, I think we're raised in a society, or we're brought up to be independent and to be able to handle everything that is thrown at us. And especially when it comes to caregiving and caregiving issues, we don't want other people to feel the burden that we're feeling. And we want everybody to think that we've got it handled and we've got things under control. And I think that, when you think about asking for help, you kind of have to admit that you are not able to handle everything. And a lot of people look at that as a flaw, or that they aren't Superwoman that they thought they were, or Superman. So I think it's definitely one of those challenges, and I agree with you today that this is such an important topic because we really have to start breaking down those barriers and realizing that it's okay that we ask for help and it's okay to accept help. And in fact, if most of the time people want to help us, they want to take some of that burden, they want to help us live, a happier life or whatever it is that we're looking for. So it's just one of those things where we've got to look at this in a different light today. And hopefully with some of the questions that we're going to answer and some of the things we're going to talk about today, we can give people the courage and the permission to sort of ask for that help when they need it.
I love it. I always think we're sometimes embarrassed. You talk about we sometimes see asking for help or needing help as a flaw.
Yes.
And we get embarrassed. I shouldn't need this help. But I was reminded you and I attended a conference with Women Against Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And Jill Lesser, who's with Us Against Alzheimer's, said something that has stuck with me ever since. And she said, Alzheimer's is not an embarrassment, it's an emergency.
Yes.
So if you are on the side of the road and smoke is billowing out of your car, that's an emergency. I bet you're going to ask for help.
Right.
And being a caregiver, whether it's Alzheimer's, another dementia, a chronic condition, whatever it is, it's an emergency. And there are times that we have to ask for help. And I know it's one of those things we sometimes bury our head in the sand or we try to avoid it. But I think when we finally get the courage to ask for help, there is such a freedom, a sense of freedom.
Absolutely. And sort of that freedom of letting go, that feeling of peace of letting go and realizing that, I've heard a lot of caregivers, once they actually get some help, they almost say, wow, why didn't I do this sooner? Or, wow, I didn't know how bad I felt, or I didn't know how stressed out I was until I got a little bit of help, whatever it might be. That so it's like a hindsight. We have a lot of caregivers say that to us over the years of, boy, once I had my neighbor, come over for a couple of hours where I ran to the grocery store, I realized how great it was to have those 2 hours to myself, and I just felt better for the rest of the day. It's sort of that hindsight of once you accept the help, how great it is and what a good feeling it is.
Absolutely. And I don't want to forget about this middle part, because we can ask for help. We can work up that courage and say, okay, you know what? I can't do this by myself, and I need some help. But I hear all the time, how do I get the help? Where is the help? So I know your book, Confidence to Care, has all kinds of resources listed in the back. But can you give us some tips on, okay, I'm ready to ask for help. Now what? How do I go about getting that help?
Right. Well, there's a lot of ways, and that in itself can be a little bit overwhelming. Just where do you begin? And I think everybody approaches it differently. So when I say that, I mean people look at it as what kind of help do they need? First of all, obviously, that's one of the first things you might look at. But you also need to think about what in the situation is causing the most stress, or another way to look at it is what's something easy that I don't need to necessarily do as a caregiver. And I often go to meals with this one. How many times has the neighbor or your relative or somebody said, hey, I'm just going to bring over a meal this week, and we just say no because we're like, no, we can handle all that. But that's one of those tasks, do you really need to handle it? And is that something you're okay giving away to somebody else?
Right.
So go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, how many times, because we all know as caregivers, how many times do we hear, let me know if there's anything I can do to help? Or,
yes.
How can I help? And we all think, oh, well, they're not sincere, right? They're just saying that to be nice. Well, that's when you pull out that list. Wow, it would be really great if, you could maybe do dinner for us on, one night this week. That would really take a load off for me. Or, whatever that list is. Wow, hey, I know you drive by the pharmacy on your way home. If I call in the meds, would you mind just swinging by and picking them up?
Another great example.
So I think I love having that list of specifically what do I need help with, because then when somebody makes that offer, you have, here's kind of what I'm looking for, some help with, which one of these would be easiest for you to do?
Right. And I think the other part of this goes to what, a lot of people think help means coming over and being a caregiver and certain situations, you know, so people when they offer help, but sometimes family caregivers, you know, we've got to be okay with saying, you know what, seeking out the person who has a common interest maybe with the care recipient. So whether it's like I can use my grandma, for example. She had some dementia, and her best friend, yes, it was her best friend, and she would always say, oh, what can I help you do today, Marce? What can I help you do? And they had a common love for reading the People magazine and some of those Star and Enquirer magazines. So she would come over once a week and read those magazines and talk about the stories with my grandmother for just a couple of hours while the caregiver gets a break, or while the family caregiver got a break for that moment. And so it's things like that where it doesn't have to be you know, cooking a meal. It could even be if you have a common interest or a talent, or even when somebody has Alzheimer's disease. I know a lot of people that aren't around that get real nervous about, well, what do I do? How do I handle things? What do I say? When really it just needs to find a common interest or a common activity that you might like, or just a fun thing that you do, that, like if it's playing piano, or it's the Wheel of Fortune's on and you know the person loves Wheel of Fortune. I mean, it can be as simple as that. So it's another thing where as you enlist the help of these caregivers, one of the items should be on the list is I need an hour to myself. And it's so as you're going through the list of, yeah, I could use a meal, I could use somebody to pick up a prescription, there's got to be on that list somewhere time for me, time for the family caregiver. So don't be afraid to enlist some of those people. And it's a trial and error thing, right, Kat? I mean, we've seen this before where people, you know, let's see how it goes. Let me leave you spend an hour with my loved one who has Alzheimer's disease and see what happens. See how you feel. Can you just give me 1 hour so I can run to the gym and back? You know, an hour, everybody can survive an hour, and then you kind of build up to that comfort level is how I've seen it before.
That's awesome. And, you know, leaving some tips of, mom really likes talking about gardening, or,
right.
You know, even if your friend doesn't enjoy gardening or know anything, just starting that conversation and engaging in that and asking questions. And you're so right, Molly, that time away, caregivers, it's not that you deserve this. You totally deserve it. It is a requirement for your health.
Absolutely.
You have to have time away. You have to, for your physical health, for your mental, emotional health, you have to have it. Molly, I know you're aware of the program, and I want to remind all of our listeners, in case they're not. We, nearly a year ago, partnered with Seth Rogen and his wife and their charity, Hilarity for Charity. And the mission of our partnership is to give families who are caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's or another dementia some relief. So we give out respite care grants to families all over the U.S. and Canada. So you get time away while one of our Homestead caregivers, who is extensively trained in Alzheimer's and dementia behaviors and caregiving, comes in and takes care of your loved one. So it's completely free, and I encourage all of you to apply for this grant. You can find the application on our website, which is helpforalzheimersfamilies.com. We are always taking applications, so please just, take a few minutes out of your day when you can and get an application into us. We want to do what we can to really help families get that break that they deserve and that they need.
Absolutely.
Molly,
That's a great reminder.
It is so important, and I just, we hear all the time, Molly, I know you do, and I do on social media, about how they don't have a break. They have no way of getting a break, and they're having a hard time finding that. So
right.
Hopefully this can be a solution for some of you. I do want to jump into some questions, and if you haven't yet asked your question, you can do so. right now, just look for that question section on your screen and go ahead and type that in. Our first question, Molly, comes from Carolyn. And here is her question. Is sleeping all the time normal? My client would sleep all the time if I let her. When I'm not there, her husband says he has a difficult time getting her up and dressed. So not a question about help, but this, I mean, it's another common question that we get. What is normal?
You know, it's a great question, and you're right. It's not related to asking for help. However, this family has gotten help. Just by the context, that's great that the husband, the spouse, has reached out and gotten some extra help. And I love that there's a team approach here, and everybody's trying to understand, is sleeping all the time normal? And you know what? It really does depend on the individual. And it sounds to me that this individual is sleeping more than they usually would have. That's why the concern is there. So the thing about Alzheimer's is that it can change your sleep patterns, even though there's a lot of research out there, but the scientists and the geriatricians and the doctors out there, they don't really know why these sleep changes can occur. But there is a correlation. When you do get Alzheimer's disease, there can be some sleep changes. Now, one thing I always like to make sure that families understand is to consider another factor, which is the depression factor. Now, when somebody has Alzheimer's disease, obviously they're not able to engage as much as they used to. They're not contributing to life in the same way that they used to. And you know what? That can lead to people feeling down. And when you're down, you're lackadaisical, you're lethargic, and you're probably sleeping a little bit more than usual. So I do think it warrants a phone call or a visit to the doctor. And I think I've heard family caregivers really kind of starting to keep track of sleeping patterns and sort of charting that a little bit just on a piece of paper, nothing fancy, no fancy journal or anything, just keeping track of the sleeping patterns so that when you go into the doctor, you can say, here's what's happening. When doctors have some history in a sleep pattern for a week or a couple weeks, it really can help them understand what really is happening.
That's good information. And along with the sleep pattern, documenting any activity as well, right? So not just that she slept these hours, but when she was awake, this is what this is what we were doing. This is her, her physical activity.
Absolutely.
So, and I always like to remind our listeners, Molly, that anytime something new happens, document it, and if it's concerning, ask your healthcare professional.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We don't know. It could be a symptom of something that is far more serious. Hopefully it's not, but having that reassurance from a medical professional is worth the time to at least call into the nurse line and get their opinion.
Absolutely. I do like to share just along this line, though, as we're talking about sleeping and trying to motivate people to get up. We've heard so many great stories and tips from our family caregivers and from our professional home and set caregivers that I have to share a few, if that's okay, Kat.
Oh, I love it.
Well,
I bet you're going to tell one of my favorites.
I don't know. I don't know one of your favorites. You can tell it if I don't. But basically,
okay, I will.
We have you've got to think about this in a way of sort of enticing people occasionally to get up and to get moving around. One of the biggest things with Alzheimer's disease is to keep that familiar routine. But I always like to think about what would motivate this client, this senior, to get out of bed. Now, maybe it's you got to think about if it's in the morning, the breakfast time. Can you cook some bacon? Does the person love bacon? The smell of bacon or the smell of a good cup of coffee, that aroma really does wake people up and can really get people motivated to get up and come and eat while it's hot, for example.
It works for me, Molly.
It works for me, too. That's why I keep smiling as I'm even saying that. When my husband's cooking bacon in the morning, I'm up. I can smell it and I'm out. But the other thing is just thinking about enticing to a fun activity of the day, or I often use the one of, you know, you've got a lunch date today, or today's the day where we go to the park with your grandson, so we've got to get up and get moving. Or tonight's the night when you're going to the play with your son. Let's get dressed and get ready and get going. So you got to think about it in ways of trying to motivate them to get up. So we've heard a lot of those techniques to really get people up and moving throughout the day.
That is great. You didn't tell my favorite, so I have to take a second to tell it.
Okay. Okay.
And I know you know this story, but we had a client with Home Instead who was retired military.
Oh.
And you know the story now.
I know the story. It's a good one.
It is good. And we talk a lot about living in their world and knowing their life story. And the caregiver was having a really difficult time getting him up and out of bed and showered and ready to go. And so finally the caregiver came in and said, the colonel is coming for inspection. We got to get up and get showered and get ready. And boy, if that didn't get him out of bed. And that was something he was used to for how many years of, being, ship shape and inspection ready, and that's what worked. So I love the enticement tips of something to look forward to, something to really kind of pull you out of bed. And I love the idea of, what is something that this person is interested in, what motivates this person,
yes,
and using that.
Absolutely. That's a great story. It's a great example
so Carolyn,
of exactly what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And Carolyn, keep trying. And some days one thing is going to work, and the next day it's not going to work. So just keep trying. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take a question from Scott. And this is an interesting question, Molly. Scott emailed us, by the way, at livechat@homeinstead.com. So if you ever have a question and it doesn't happen to be a chat time, go ahead and email them there, and we will incorporate them into our next chat or try and get back to you before then. But Molly, here is Scott's question. After someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, should you limit his or her interactions with new people? For instance, if their daughter has a new man in her life, is it better to not have him meet the person with Alzheimer's in order to keep their daily routine the same? That's interesting.
It's a great question, and it really touches on one of a point I love to tell family caregivers, because I think it's something we miss sometime. And Scott, thank you for sending that in. But let me first go back to what we said a few minutes ago. Routine, keeping things the same areas, all very, very important. But that doesn't mean that we should just not have the person with Alzheimer's interact in new places with new people. And what I often like to tell people, and family caregivers, and we got to think about it in our own lives, is that it's really about the vibe or the feeling that people give off to each other. So you've all been in the situation where you're at a store and the clerk is in a terrible mood, and you just know it. She doesn't say anything, but you can just tell she's grumpy, she's crabby, she's whatever, or he or she, whoever, and you just know they're in a bad mood. And it's just by body language, it's by their facial expressions. They might barely talk to you. That could be a clue. So I think we've got to consider that when we're in that kind of a situation, we want to get the heck away as fast as possible. We don't want to deal with this person. We're just not in the mood. It's the same way when you meet somebody new when the person has Alzheimer's. They're going a lot off feeling now, and they're going a lot off of how everybody around is feeling. They're really picking up on that, the feeling of the room. Is everybody stressed out and nervous? Or is everybody calm and smiling and like, oh, who's this gentleman? Oh, he looks nice. And, oh, my daughter here or my granddaughter likes them. I'm going to like them too. It's a matter of a feeling. So it's important to have, the first few times to have familiar faces in the room when you do this kind of a meeting or meet new people or in a new area. it can apply to any kind of a situation, but it really matters on that nonverbal feeling that you're putting off in the room. So staying calm, staying relaxed, smiling, all of those things are very important when meeting new people or taking a person with Alzheimer's into a new place. So Scott, thank you. That's a great question, and I love that you're really thinking that through, because you don't want to cause any extra stress to the person that has, Alzheimer's. You don't want to agitate them anymore. But so hopefully that helps, when you get to that situation.
As you know, our caregivers all over the world experience this every day.
Yeah.
So every day we are helping a new client or introducing a new caregiver to a client. And, that's exactly, how we train our caregivers. And that's what you'll see when a home instead caregiver meets with a client with Alzheimer's or another dementia. They're smiling, they're calm, they're not busy, like, let me get to work, they're purely and truly interested in making a connection with this person.
Absolutely.
Okay, I have a question here that I don't think we've had before, but this one comes from Hildy, who's on our live chat today. And Hildy's question is, my mom has dysphagia and goes through not swallowing her saliva or mucus. All of it is spit out, and she's wanting to spit it into a tissue. Am I correct in reminding her of the importance that she needs to swallow, otherwise her throat will get dry? She gets so annoyed at the reminders.
Okay, Hildy, that's a great question. I've seen this before. I've seen this kind of a situation before. And first of all, I would definitely call attention to the doctor on this one, just to make sure there's not a swallowing problem. So when people are spitting things out, it can be a swallowing problem, or maybe they already have a sore throat or something's going on. And so I've seen it where there is a swallowing issue identified. I've also seen a situation, this exact what you're saying, where they're spitting it into a tissue, and it's become a nervous, kind of a nervous tick, if you will, or a nervous habit that has been created, which is definitely hard to break. So that's why I guess I would definitely visit with a doctor prior, so you can determine how to handle the situation. The third thing that I see or have seen is that sometimes people have like the drainage in your throat from bad sinuses or sinus infection or even allergies. So again, visiting with a doctor, trying to get it under control, understanding what is causing this this sort of this behavior, if you will, and then deciding on a plan. But I think you're still right, Hildy, to definitely remind her about getting, you don't want your throat to get dry. I would try maybe to encourage even more fluids. Okay, it looks like Hildy's replying as I'm talking. Hildy's saying that the doctor is aware, okay, and that it's more of a behavior issue. Okay, so in that case, this is a hard one, because it's really hard to correct that kind of a nervous tic or that kind of a behavior issue when it's been going on for a while. So I think you've got to get creative with this one. I would try things like any kind of a cough drop or a lemon drop or a Werther's Original, something that she can kind of suck on that might make her learn to start swallowing a little bit more. I'd try popsicles. Those sometimes are good, or some kind of an ice cream bar where she's sucking on something and is swallowing all at the same time, so that she sort of gets used to the swallowing technique again, or that's what she's supposed to do, is swallow. I've seen those types of things work. I've also seen, actually, it's figuring out what she would love to. Like, I've seen people that have had this issue, and it's even a peppermint mint, those little white peppermint mints
Yep.
As
My
long and
grandmother
the person,
loved the
yes,
butterscotch discs.
there you go. Once you find out what the thing is that she will suck on and loves, then you just always have them around, and you kind of have bowls of them around, and you're offering those things on a regular basis so she continues to do that. Because as you're sucking, the saliva is going down, and you're getting a little bit more saliva so the throat doesn't get dry. The other thing I would try, Hildy, is maybe some throat spray if she does get a dry, like one of those, when you do have a sore throat, they've got those over-the-counter throat sprays, and I've even seen sprays for dry mouth that can sometimes help. So that can be helpful, like kind of wet her makes so her mouth isn't dry, but it allows her to, that spray can sometimes, make it feel like it's a normal saliva and she doesn't want to spit it out. So you're going to have to get creative. I apologize. I mean, that's tough. That's such a tough one, Hildy. I don't have an exact answer, but hopefully some of those suggestions, even like I think about watermelon, like some juicier fruit that's very, very water-based. Even like peaches right now are in great season and they're very juicy. Anything that can really help her keep swallowing and get into that habit of swallowing.
That's great. And Hildy, I want to I want to share a story. We had another chat participant. I don't know, Molly, if it was the last month or the one before, but they had a similar problem. But their issue was their loved one would not spit into a tissue, just on the chair or the floor or wherever. Boy. So count your blessings on that one, that using a tissue.
Yes, I've seen that before too. That's so hard.
So,
it's usually, I'm sorry, Kat, to cut you off.
No, go ahead, Molly.
Hildy, it's just usually one of those things where something in their mouth is making them uncomfortable. So it's either a flavor or a taste, or maybe it is dryness. Whatever it is, she thinks she's handling it by spitting it into a tissue. So again, it's the disease process, and I would just try any of those ideas that we've talked about, and hopefully it gets better. Good luck to you. Thank you for writing in. That's a tough one.
It is. Okay, if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask them now. We are going to take just a short little break here because we want to get your input. Everything we do here at Home Instead, we really want to make sure that we are bringing you resources and information that apply to you in your situation so that we can help. So we have a question, and you can access the poll in your viewer. The question is, what kind of help do you have in your caregiving situation? Do you have no help? Do you have family members that help? Perhaps you have friends or neighbors that help? Do you have access to volunteers? Or do you work with paid professional caregivers to help? So go ahead and take a moment, and this really helps us build out any programs, resources, anything like that that we can offer to you to try and help. So we will give you just a moment to do that, and then we will get back to your questions. Molly, I've got a question for you. As I was reading the poll question here, we ask about what kind of help do you have, and one of the option is family. And I hear somebody said to me, I was in a support group once, and somebody said, I have 4 brothers and sisters, but none of them do a thing to help me. All of the caregiving responsibility is left on my shoulders. And somebody else then immediately spoke up and said, I'm an only child, and I wish I had 4 brothers and sisters to at least try and coax into helping. So I know a lot of us struggle with getting family on board, getting them to help, getting them to kind of maybe have that same philosophy. Do you have any tips or suggestions for that?
I do have a couple of thoughts on that, because in my own family, I've been experiencing that here and there over the years in different situations. And one of the things that I've learned is that, well, there's two things. So one of the big things I've learned is that people, not everybody is built to be a caregiver. Not
Very
everybody can handle being a caregiver. And not everybody has the capacity to mentally, emotionally, physically handle that role. When your family caregivers out there, you don't know how special you really are because you are doing it. Now, I think number one, taking the approach of not everybody can handle this, and but in the same line, there is a role for all four siblings or for family members, and you just got to determine what that role is. There might be a role of somebody who handles the money. There might be a role for somebody who handles all the prescriptions and getting all of that together. There might be, there's got to be, everybody has to have a part in this because it's everybody's parents. It's just figuring out the right role. But the other thing I've learned is that a lot of people see the family caregiver, the main caregiver doing all the work, and they either think, oh, well, she's got it or he's got it, I don't need to help, or they think, oh, that person doesn't want me involved. I could list 100 reasons. And so I think the biggest opportunity here is to have a really nice, sit-down conversation with your team of siblings or your immediate family or whoever it is that's in your group, and really start to talk through what is happening, what's going on, trying to stay as non-judgmental as possible, which is very, very hard. Believe me, I've been through it. So just really talking and thinking of it as a team approach and what is everybody's role. The other thing is you can't let people off the hook just because they say, oh, well, I don't think I could do it. I invite them to spend a half a day with you. Invite them to spend a couple of hours. See the kind of things that you're doing. Let them get used to it or familiar with it to know what they're signing up for. A lot of times people shy away because they shy away because they don't know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're to expect. Yes, they don't know what to expect, and I think it's going to be really, really hard. So I would also, that's the other thing, is just invite people in to see and to help and just spend the day with you to see the kind of things that you do and what you do. I will never forget my first job out of high school working in adult daycare, where I was hired as a program aide. Now that meant I was helping with some activities. I was helping with the meals, serving meals, doing things like that. And I'll never forget the first time that I had to do personal care and help my favorite little lady, Betsy, in the bathroom. She had a terrible accident. And I thought, well, I wasn't hired to do this. This wasn't my job. I don't know how to do this. But the second Betsy looked at me and said, I need your help, I loved this woman, and I went in and helped her, and I did everything, and it was all good, and everything was fine. But if you would have told me initially that that's what I was going to be doing, I probably would have ran out the door and not taken the job because I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't, I didn't know, I wasn't expecting all of that. But as you go, as you get into it and learn, it doesn't have to be that scary. So that's some of my advice I would give to families as they're trying to figure out and sit down and put a plan together.
That's great. And, one of the things that I would recommend is to make that complete, full list of all of the help your loved one needs.
Right.
But, meals, bathing, financial, absolutely everything. If you're not sure if it should go on the list, it should go on the list. And then when you have this meeting, if you're spearheading this meeting, you can say, look, copies for everybody. This is all of the help that mom needs. This is what I am able to provide. This is what I can do. Jim, what can you do? Sally, what? And, when they can see it and they feel like they have a choice, and say, okay, well, now we've got 4 or 5 things on this list that none of us are able to do.
Great idea.
How do we get the help to get that taken care of?
That's a great idea, Kat. Very good.
And I want to give you all a resource for this because we know that family conflict around caregiving is common. So we have some information for you. You can go to solvingfamilyconflict.com and get some information on, how to have these conversations with your families and the tools to really, regardless of where your relationships are now, how to come together to provide the best care possible for your loved one. Okay, we have a really great question that came in from Lorene, Molly. And this is her question. My 53-year-old husband was diagnosed with moderate to severe dementia last June. We have 3 children, ages 21, 19, and 12. They make us proud in every aspect except their utter denial of their dad's disease. They have to be forced to help in any way around the house or with their dad. I feel as if they're in denial. I'm close to the end of my rope. I know they're worried over the genetics, but how do I get my children on the team I'm supposed to have to help in caregiving?
Oh, Lorene, I'm so sorry. That is so tough. It just breaks my heart when I hear comments like you're at the end of your rope. And for you to write in, thank you. Just writing in and asking the question, you're asking for help, and that's the first step, and I'm very grateful that you've asked, and hopefully we have some solutions for you today. I do want to say also, I'm so sorry, 53-year-old, that is so hard, and it's got to be very, very hard. So Lorene, we're really thinking of you here. As far as the kids go, this is a tough one, and I think it's tough because I understand what you're saying about they're probably in denial, or that's what you're thinking, that you feel as though they're in denial. They probably are. And you know what that I also think it might be is they're probably a little bit scared, or probably a lot scared. And they also might be, when I think back when I was 21, many, many years ago, and 19, boy, that's not what you're not supposed to be, quote unquote,
right,
caring for your father at that age. You're not supposed to be caregiving and doing those types of things. You're out having fun. You're you're in college, or you're a teenager, you're just out having a blast. And so I think it might be there might be some anger there, or some, this isn't my role, this isn't my job, I shouldn't have to do this because this isn't when this is supposed to happen in my life. So I'm sorry that all that is happening. And I guess what I would say is, it kind of goes back to what we're just talking about, is that team approach and trying to get everybody on board. I'm sure, Lorene, you've had a lot of conversations, but is there another conversation in a different environment? Do you all sit down and have this conversation? And you might have to consider doing it in even a counseling type of a setting.
Yeah.
Is there a local Alzheimer's association in your area that you guys could just go in and talk to them? The professionals there can have a conversation just in a little conference room and have a talk. Or is there a referral to a counseling? Lorene, if you're still working, maybe you have an EAP where you can go and sign up for a free counseling session, and the 4 of you can get together and sit down and really talk with another professional in the room about, boy, this is really what's happening. And sometimes a lot of counselors, they don't have a lot of knowledge about Alzheimer's. So is there a social worker, or even the doctor from the doctor's office where the diagnosis has come? This is a great intervention, kind of a meeting that a social worker can handle. So if the doctor is associated with a hospital or a clinic where there's social workers, or even chaplains, I guess if I were you, I'd kind of be reaching out to some of those outside professionals about, guys, this is really what this is. This is what the disease is, and this is what's going to happen. And there's an opportunity here for our family to come together and get through this, number one, and number two is help our dad and our husband live the next 10, however many years really well and still have a good quality of life. Alzheimer's and dementia doesn't have, I know it's a sense of dread when you get that diagnosis, but there are ways to still have a meaningful and engaging life. So I guess I would kind of seek some outside consulting maybe, but I think the other thing is, go ahead, Kat.
I was just saying, it's only been a year since the diagnosis. And let me first say, as I have a 12-year-old, and my husband does not have Alzheimer's, and trust me, getting her to do anything to help around the house is equally as difficult. So I think it's been a year, and I think, you have to let your kids go through that grieving process.
Yeah.
Right? We've all heard it called the long goodbye. Your kids are old enough and intelligent enough to know really kind of what this disease is about, and that it's not a good thing, and that they're losing their dad. And you're going through a grieving process too. So I really want to echo Molly's recommendation. Find a really good family counselor. Ask your friends for recommendations. And your kids need a safe place where they can go, they can cry, they can yell, and talk about how unfair it is, because it is unfair. They've been dealt a terrible hand, and you have too. But they need that safe place, because I'm betting at home and around you, they probably don't want to have those breakdowns and those moments of vulnerability because they want to be strong for mom.
Right.
But if we don't let them grieve, we have no way of asking them to help, because all we're doing is adding more responsibility onto their shoulders. I also really, really encourage you. Your story is very familiar to one of our other experts and my friend Karen Garner. She has 2 kids, one going into high school, her son is 12, and her husband is about the same age as yours. I really encourage you to send your question into her. You can do that on our website, helpforalzheimersfamilies.com. You can read her blogs there. She also has a blog at missingjim.com. And I think in her writing you will find some comfort that you're not the only family going through this. And it sucks. And it makes me really, really sad for you and your kids. But I know that, you can find the help that you need. And, Molly is right, finding that good family therapist, that counselor, and really finding those resources in your area to help, I think can help get everybody on board. Do you have any other words of advice or support for Lorraine, Molly?
Yes, I do, Lorraine. The other thing I wanted to say is, and Kat, I'm glad you brought up that Karen Garner. I was thinking the exact same thing. But the other thing, Lorraine, is thinking about your kids. It has been a year, almost a year. It's been a year, and are they? Without talking to you, you're just sending in the questions. I wonder if they're feeling like do they know what to do to help? Have you expressed what you need? I'm sure you have around the house. But when it comes to Dad, are they feeling comfortable with him? Are they nervous? Do they know how to talk to him? Do they know that they can still do lots of the same activities that they used to do? Maybe it's trying little ways to get them to engage in some of the things they used to do with their dad, whether it's going to watch a game together and for a couple of hours and see how that, maybe it's a matter of they don't know what to do or they're nervous. I mean, that's where you've really got to uncover what the issue is, which is it's so hard, Lorraine, because you're the mom here and the spouse, and you're trying to get your kids on board and you're trying to care for your husband. So I guess my heart is just breaking for you, and we will definitely keep you in our prayers. But I just invite you to really think about what could be the reason. Why are they not getting on board? Is it just denial, or is there some more? Like Kat was saying, is there some more? Like, are they mad? Do they want to yell? Or are they just so upset about things? You know, what is it? So I guess you got to keep the communication going. Keep trying to talk to them. If you don't want to do the family counselor kind of an idea, but I think sometimes, again, when people get the diagnosis, it's one of those, well, life's over. You know, this is terrible. Like this, you know, instead of taking a new approach of what can we do to still live as normally as we used to, and how can we help Dad live the great days ahead of us? You know, how can we keep him engaged? How can we keep him in his routine? How can we keep him doing the things he loves, and sort of looking at it in a different way? So, Lorene, I'm very sorry, and I wish you, gosh, I wish you luck and strength and everything in this kind of a situation.
Absolutely. Okay, Molly, I do want to take one more question, but before we do that, I want to make sure that we don't run out of time, and we make sure that we can give everybody information on resources and what's coming up next. So we're going to do one more question, so hang with us. But some of the resources that we talked about today, helpforalzheimersfamilies.com. If you have questions about Alzheimer's, if you need support, whatever you're looking for, if you want to apply for the Relief Care Grant, this is where you want to go. So there's also great information on some training, whether it's online or in person. So if you're wanting to learn some new techniques and Dad keeps saying no, how do I get him to say yes? Things like that. helpforalzheimersfamilies.com. That's also where you can ask questions to our experts and read blog posts by Karen Garner. I also really encourage you, if you haven't already, to go to confidencetocare.com. This is where you can learn more about Molly's book. And I know I say it a lot, but it is one of the best resources that I have seen for family caregivers. And Molly, I love the way you've broken down the chapters, right? I don't need to read an entire book. If my dad is, is having mood changes, I can go right to that chapter and see, okay, what are some different things I can try? And as I mentioned before, the book also contains a lot of resources, phone numbers and websites, and different things to help you out. So go check that out. And then also, be sure to come over to Facebook if you're on Facebook and join us. We're at facebook.com/rememberforalzheimers. It's a great community of more than 250,000 people just like you. So we're there to support one another, to give you information, and to hopefully give you some inspiration every once in a while as well. Okay, if you have your calendars out, you guys are all getting a sneak peek, the first to know about next month's live chat. My friend and expert by experience, Karen Garner, is joining me, and we're going to talk about overcoming social isolation. Recently, we did a survey, and 78% of caregivers who are caring for somebody with Alzheimer's or another dementia report being more isolated. So we know you guys have a difficult time for a number of reasons, but we want to talk about it. We want to share some tips. Karen's going to give us some tips. She's got her 2 kids and her husband, and she's going to tell us how she manages to stay socially active with her family and within the community. And we want to hear your tips too. So you can go ahead and register at helpforalzheimersfamilies.com. And the chat is on Tuesday, August 25th at 5 p.m. and you can always send your questions in ahead of time. And our email is livechat@homeinstead.com. Okay, Molly, we've got just a couple of minutes left, and I want to go to a question. We're really focused on caregivers, asking for help, getting help, accepting help. But what happens when the table turns and it's our loved one with dementia? This question got emailed into us by Kathy, and here's her question. My mom, who is 85, will constantly ask the same question numerous times. Many family members have, over the past 2 years, commented on this, and we are all concerned. She refuses to see a neurologist and insists it's just the aging process. I know she is frightened about the possible diagnosis of Alzheimer's. How do I convince her to go for testing?
Well,
what do you think, Molly?
I know, that's a great question, Kathy, and it's very, very, very hard. But I think any time a person is faced with a change in health, it can be scary. And it's hard to figure out and sort of face that reality of what could it be. But I think what I would do is really talk to her and confirm with her, yes, it could very well be just the aging process, but we want to make sure. Because you know what? I get this question a lot about, I ask the same question, or I forget something, or I walk in a room and I can't remember why I walked into a room. Do I have Alzheimer's? So anytime the memory is affected a person, they automatically jump to the Alzheimer's conclusion. And the thing is that memory loss is a symptom of many different things and chronic conditions, and some things that could be treatable and curable. And so asking the same question numerous times over and over, that could be something different. It could be Alzheimer's, but it could also be something different. And when I hear this, I think, well, Alzheimer's and dementia, they have multiple symptoms, and there's a steady progression. And so 2 years, and this is the only change that's been noticed, I would tend to think that it might be something else, just because, again, when Alzheimer's disease or dementia, there's more than just one symptom, and there's more than just it. There's been a steady decline. So, I really, I guess Kathy, what I would do is just convince your mom, or say, you know what, you're right, Mom, it probably is the aging process, but we need to rule it out. And we need to, this is very interesting. I have an aunt who has had some memory loss, and everybody is assuming that she has Alzheimer's disease, and it's been a few years now. And I kept telling everybody, look, she would have progressed. There would have been a progression of this disease. Right. I don't think it's Alzheimer's. And you know what? She finally went to get another opinion and another MRI, and she has Parkinson's disease. And so they've taken her off the Alzheimer's medications and put her on the Parkinson's disease. And let me tell you, it feels like my aunt is back. She's been missing for a couple of years now. And so I've experienced this in my own life, Kathy, and so I very much encourage you to do whatever it takes to convince your mom to get that extra testing. But again, where this was at with my aunt was that she was just scared of the diagnosis, exactly how your mom is. And so I think what finally, convinced her was, this isn't a very good life you're living right now. This isn't, you're not enjoying life as much anymore. And because there hasn't been a progression, this probably is something else. So let's go rule everything else out. And so that's how it happened. And so you've just got to think of ways. The other thing is your mom being 85, you've got to think about preparing for the future. So, you've got to make sure affairs are in order. You've got to make sure there's important decisions that have been made. You know, you've got financial documents and everything in order. So it just getting the diagnosis really can relieve a lot of stress on both your mom and yourself. So again, Kat, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that because it's a tough one. It's a tough question.
Yeah, and the only thing I think I would add to that, Molly, is be reassuring. Mom, I don't think it's anything to worry about, but we should get it checked out and take that route. Good luck, Kathy, and let us know. Keep us posted. Molly, I want to thank you so much for spending the last hour with us. It's been a great hour. And I want to thank all of you who took the time to hang out with us, to ask your questions. I hope you got some great tips. And be sure to mark on your calendars next month's live chat, Tuesday, August 25th. I'll be chatting with Karen Garner. And until then, you can email us at livechat@homeinstead.com. And be sure to come visit us on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/rememberforalzheimers. Thanks, everyone, and have a really great rest of your week. Thanks, Molly.
Thank you, Kat. Thanks, everyone.